Hello, everybody, and welcome to the world's favorite youth baseball podcast, Clearing the Bases, featuring Coach Jimmy Filangieri. I'm David Friedman, and I want to thank you for coming along this ride with us. How we doing tonight, Coach?
Doing good, Dave. It's that time of year again. Christmas time.
Oh, I thought you meant the one time where you get 3 weeks off from baseball.
No, as we know, I've had a lot more than that. And it's funny you say that because it's flying by. I mean, all of the stuff that I said that I was going to get done, I've been working on. I don't want to say that I've been shirking my responsibility, but the time is flying by. I'm feeling a little bit of pressure to get things done, but I'm sure that I'll be back, back on the field in no time, and it'll seem like I didn't have any time off.
Yeah. Well, pressure's good. Pressure makes diamonds, right? So that's a good thing to have on your shoulders. Make sure that you're staying in line and staying to the plan. How are things coming along?
Good. I mean, like I said, they're going slow, but I kind of wanted it to go slow because I want to make sure that I do all of the right planning and that I don't rush into anything. And I'm the type of person that has to think a lot about what I'm doing to make sure it's right. Otherwise it becomes a disaster. So I would say that I'm moving forward at a good pace, but like I said, I'm feeling the pressure. I'd like to get something out in terms of a clinic by February. I kind of wanted to do something before the high school season started. So gives me a little bit of time, but I'll get there.
Yeah, the clock is a ticking. One of the things we have no control over, right, is how fast that clock starts ticking. So, got to get on it. And you also, I'm sure, you're excited and getting ready to head out to the conventions coming up.
Absolutely. I mean, I've got, I leave in 2 weeks. So,
Wow.
One of the things too that I wanted to mention was that we are taking the show on the road. Well, I shouldn't say we are. I am, because you're not coming with me.
The global we.
And if there's a way we can patch you in, believe me, I'm working on that too, so that if you have some time while I'm there, we can do the show together. But that's something that I'm really looking forward to now. I have a few people that have reached out to me and they're interested, so we'll meet while we're there and do a show live. And I want to try and get as many people as possible. I mean, there are about maybe half a dozen presentations that I want to see. So I'll do them. But in between those presentations and, afterwards, maybe after dinner or something, I can sit down. And again, I just want to do 10 minutes with people to see how they like the convention, what their interests are, and just to get the word out to our listeners that this is something that you may want to be involved in.
Right. What's, why did you want to go to the convention? What is the main thing that you're hoping to get out of it? What are you getting out of it? Those kinds of things. That should all be very interesting. Well, you said you have a couple people lined up already. Anybody you want to share with us, or is it all going to be a big surprise?
Well, most of it's going to be a surprise. But one of the conversations that I'm really looking forward to having is one portion of the convention is a youth, I forget what they call it, but it's like the youth portion that's geared towards youth coaches. And one of the presenters actually reached out to me and said he would like to come on the show, and I'm really looking forward to that. I think it'll be interesting to actually, I'll sit in on his presentation, and then afterwards sit down with him and discuss what he spoke about and why he did and that type of thing, and get some good stuff out there.
Point out all the things you disagree with and that he's doing wrong. Jimmy's not going to make friends.
Yeah, no, quite the opposite. Believe it or not, a lot of the stuff that I do and that I know as a coach, I've learned from many of those people that have spoken at those conventions.
Sure. Otherwise, you wouldn't keep coming back.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we'll look forward to that. And on that note, something else I know we've been looking forward to for a while, having a very important, very special guest on this week's show, Mr. Paul Reddick. He is one of the premier mostly pitching trainers, but baseball trainers in the country. He's been in business for many, many years. I can remember when my sons were quite young, I had looked into his programs. He runs the Reddick Baseball Education Center, and he also is the founder of the 90 Mile Per Hour Club, which again is a pitching specific program that he runs. And just a wealth of information, and really somebody, like I said, I know you've been trying to get together with him for quite a while.
Yeah, this past summer, we went out to dinner together, and during the conversation, it was brought up, hey, I'd love to have you as a guest. And, then time goes by and, you get onto things and other things and you forget. And I reached out to him right away. He agreed to come on, and I was happy to have him.
Okay, so without further ado, let's bring on Paul.
So, Paul, thanks for coming by. How's everything?
Yeah, everything is great. Everything's great. Yeah, thanks for having me, Jimmy. Appreciate it.
Oh, no, I appreciate you coming on. I'm looking forward to a good conversation. I mean, I know that we have a lot to talk about. One of the things that I wanted to bring up in our conversation, so we might as well go to that first, is what amazes me is your path to where you are and my path to where I am, kind of very similar paths where we both stopped playing at a very early age.
Yeah.
You want to get into a little bit about, what happened to you, and then I'll just touch on a few little things with me, and we could take it from there.
Yeah. So I was, if you wanted to, it depends on which lens you look at it, but you could sum up my playing career as a failure. That would assume, though, that maybe it would have went somewhere. So I'll preface everything with maybe I would have been average. So I went to Seton Hall Prep, great school, best high schools in the, maybe in the country. And I failed. I failed off the baseball team my sophomore year, failed off again my junior year. The story of my senior year is actually pretty funny. I actually was eligible and got chickenpox.
Oh, geez.
And so when you get chickenpox, you're 17. It's it's kind of like a big deal. I was like 140 pounds and stuff like that. And I wasn't in no, I was just trying to kind of get through it. But and then I took my chances. I had my opportunities, certainly. And kind of being you'll probably appreciate this, but being a young man from Union, New Jersey, you have a certain way of looking at things and a certain way of kind of taking on the world. And I certainly did everything in my power to kind of blow every chance that I could have had. Now, going back, again, it depends on the lens you look at it. I was undiagnosed, ADHD, dysgraphic, dyslexic, and I managed to squeak through school. And right. So that was just the way that went, right? They weren't talking about those things in the late 80s. They weren't. About a guidance counselor who I'll never forget. I still remember so many details about that room. I remember how the chairs felt, how I remember his tie, the color of his tie and all that. And he was there to inform me that I was going to fail off the team. And he turned around and he looked me right in the eye and he said, "You're stupid and you could forget about baseball."
Wow.
And well, I get it. That was just, he was a kind of a relic of a generation that was, tough love. And, he didn't know, I didn't know, nobody knew the things that were kind of going on inside, with ADHD and dyslexia and stuff like that. So he didn't know I was reading literally backwards, right. trying to rearrange everything. And so that was my story. And I have faith beliefs, as I'm sure we all do. That was not what I was supposed to do in life.
Yeah, no, that's
it delivered me to coaching, and my gifts were not the physical gifts of a baseball player. Like I said, I had a brother who's really good. Maybe I would have played. I'd been average. I don't know. I'd probably been average. I continued to play up until I was about 21, and I was probably below average amongst the guys that I was palling around with and playing with, kind of just in local semi-pro leagues and stuff like that here.
But that's interesting because that's my biggest gripe. And a few years ago, I wrote an article for Inside Pitch magazine. It was basically the path to coaching. And I talked a little bit about how I had stopped playing at an early age. And one of the most frustrating things to me is that I don't know whether I was a very good baseball player or I wasn't a very good baseball player. I'll never know. Yeah. And to me, that was kind of frustrating. But to your point, I guess I was meant for something else. And I began coaching at an early age, my early 20s, it's been a great path. And I love where I am now. So there's really no regrets. There's just that little bit of, was I any good or wasn't I? But really, I guess in the grand scheme of things, does it really matter?
No, I mean, like, I coached in professional baseball for a period of time. And I remember the first day looking around and saying, it was the best night of sleep I had in my entire life, because, I don't think most people really understand what good is.
Right.
And I could have took, I think there was like 40 guys there, 40, there was a bunch of guys coming in and out but it was 40 guys on our roster, give or take at any given time. And I remember, saying to myself, the last guy on this roster has an ability, a genetic ability that I just do not have. And there's no amount of work that can get that genetic ability to show up. There's a genetic ceiling we all have. Most of us fall short of it, but in the full, complete expression or maximization of my whatever genetic ability I had, it would not have been enough to get me on that field. And it was literally the Gulf Coast League. The next stop is the train station, right? There's no other stop there. So yeah, I mean, it's just that, I was born to coach people, and that's, right. And I've found myself in a lot of areas, not just in baseball. And that's just been the gift that I was given. So I don't even think of, I have no regrets whatsoever on anything. Yeah. I'm thrilled with the way things turned out. That guy telling me, my guidance counselor, Pete Butler, telling me that I was stupid and I could forget about baseball is the single best thing that anyone's ever done for me.
Right. But to your point, I'm in the same boat where I'm happy with the way things turned out. I think that this is what I was meant to do. And I guess you put that behind it. But I just thought it was very interesting that, because in the circles that, I travel, I don't meet very many people that are in your and my situation. Most guys played at high levels. They played, and when I say high levels, I'm saying like college and beyond. That's the only reason why I brought it up. I thought it was kind of interesting.
Sure. Yeah.
So you had just mentioned about your books. Let's talk a little bit about your books. First of all, how many? I couldn't fit what you wrote. Several books.
Yeah. So we have a bunch of them that are available in various places. Most of them we just kind of sell on our own. I'm probably most known for the book I wrote with Tom House.
Okay.
The Picture Perfect Pitcher, and then we wrote a book called The 5-6-7 Dad. That's been pretty. That went to like number 2 when we released it on like on the sports,
right.
bestseller list on Amazon. Those are the ones that pretty much that people kind of know me for. So,
right.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, the 5-6-7 is fascinating. And I want to get into that a little bit down the road in this conversation. But I think that it's a really important thing that the listeners of this show would gain a lot from. It's really good. But let's start out, though. Let's go with your concepts on pitching. There's a lot of stuff that I've heard you talk about, and I've read about your philosophy on pitching, especially, obviously with youth players, because that's who we're trying to reach here. And let's get into that a little bit.
So the governing dynamic of everything that we do, or I do with any of the players that I work with, or any of the programs that we produce, is simplicity beats complexity, because simple is doable. Right. Simple is doable. And we're in an age right now where access to technology via either just, actual access to it, like we all have a certain base level of technology that, 20 years ago, nobody had. We all have it now, or very few people had. And now the affordability of tech and tools is down to, where if you had $10,000, you could probably come pretty close to outfitting yourself with as much as the highest tech baseball organization had, right? You can come pretty close.
Sure.
And so because of that, there's been an influx of I don't want to say useless information, but useless to the person that it's being sold to. So
could you say that it overcomplicates things? Because that's how I feel.
Yeah. So now, like I'm new to Twitter. So in May, I joined Twitter. And so I'm getting used to the lay of the land. My guys kind of forced me. I hate social media. I hate every single thing about it, everything it represents. But here I am on Twitter. And so, and like after like a month, I had quit for like 2-3 months. I only went maybe like 6-7 weeks ago. I really kind of, just kind of, committed to it. So I posted this video where I talked about a kid enters a pitching academy or a hitting academy or clinic, right? We one of these facilities, and all the facilities kind of look alike. So it's really difficult to really tell who's what. So if it looks like a dog, acts like a dog, barks like a dog, right? It's a dog. So you drive around and you look at any facility and what's in there? Turf, cages, pitching mounds, Rapsodo, hit tracks, right? It's got all the same decorations, the banners on the wall. There's a couple teams. So how do you tell the difference between the good ones and the bad ones? Well, it comes down to the guy, right? But the point I made on the video was if you walked into the doctor and you weren't feeling good, and doctor's like, well, what brings you in today? And you're like, I don't know, I'm stuffy, congested, not feeling good. And the doctor turns to his assistant and says, I'm going to need a battery of tests here. We're going to need to do a full panel of blood work. We're going to need some x-rays. We need a CAT scan, EKG, MRI. I want blood, urine, saliva samples. You'd be like, whoa.
I just got the sniffles.
Yeah. Is everything, why are we doing all that?
Right.
Imagine the doctor going, whoa, we're the doctors. And you're going like, well, is there something, do you see something wrong? And then, well, we don't know yet. We'll do the tests and we'll tell you. Well, and then imagine the doctor coming back in and saying, looks like you got a sinus infection. Take a Z-Pack. You'll be fine in like 5 days. You'd be pissed because the doctor, first of all, just ordered an incredible amount of unnecessary tests, right? That didn't need to be done. Wasted your time, probably wasted your money or maxed out whatever your insurance, right? All these things. And he freaked you out.
Sure.
He freaked you out.
Yeah.
But a kid enters a pitching academy today and we're hooking him up to everything.
Yeah.
And we're saying, what's wrong? We'll do all the tests. Now, if you are a doctor who's been practicing medicine for years and years and years, you've been around enough sinus infections to kind of generally diagnose, probably with some reasonable degree, 95% of accuracy, this is a sinus infection.
Sure.
Now, and so the anytime it feels like anytime there's a challenge to kind of that status quo, people they kind of respond back to, well, what if it's this, like this really weird extreme example. And look, I don't begrudge anyone who's kind of come up in a system with technology, but I speak at a lot of like high school coaches events, and I always tell all the young coaches, and I talk to the young coaches and the old coaches, and I say, look, old coaches, some of the technology that's out there today is making some of the stuff that we thought was good and right to teach is proving that it's not really great.
Right.
I said we can't ignore that.
Right.
I've sat there on Rapsodo and I've seen a guy change an angle and a grip and increase. I've seen it with my own eyes, right? That technology, without that technology, there would have been no other way for that kid to make that adjustment. Now, that is kind of a tip of the spear adjustment. It's down the road, right? Yep. But it's there.
Yeah.
And I say to the young coaches, sometimes the old coaches, we get so arrogant in our experience, that we just think, oh, well, this is the way it is. Old school baseball, Babe Ruth didn't do these things, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And young coaches get so arrogant in their technology, in their view of the world. But older coaches are going to need those younger coaches to kind of give them a little bit of a view into their players that they can't get with just their senses and their hands, in their feel.
Yes.
And then the younger coaches, they need to balance out their technology and their information with wisdom.
Yeah.
You need some guys. So, you might say, you may have a kid who's hooked up to the Rapsodo and, you got their gun on him and stuff like that. And he's like, this kid needs to have 3 miles for his fastball and improve his spin rate, blah, 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 blah. And that might be true. But the old coach with wisdom might say, yeah, he might need those things. But right now, that kid's home life is shit and he needs a father.
Right.
He needs a father figure more than he needs a fastball right now. And we're losing. That is one of the biggest things I'm worried about is, and I'd be happy to talk about the guy who changed my life, a guy named Jack Burns. But we're losing that guy that this kid will be great, not because of technology or not because of strength or not because of assessment. That kid will be great because somebody cares or somebody believes in him. And in 31 years of doing this, that has been a much more successful strategy than any of the technology. And like I said, I was kind of palling around with Tom House in the late 90s. I was kind of it would be nice for me to say I was an intern of sorts, but it was even lower than that. But we did a lot of camps together. We did 2 DVD programs together. and a book, and there's nobody in the world that had more of an impact on technology than Tom House. Everybody who's doing anything in baseball now, technology wise, it is because of Tom House. And Tom will be the first to tell you. I mean, I don't want to speak for Tom. There are limits to the technology that, what the technology can do. There still has to be, there has to be flesh in the machine.
Sure.
You know
Absolutely. I mean, to your point, I believe that a lot of the technology, and obviously I'm an older coach, I believe a lot of the technology, first of all, is needed in higher level players. It's used to really fine tune things. Okay. And I think where a lot of people get lost is if I'm watching a 13, 14-year-old kid hitting, okay, the first thing I do is just put balls on a tee and just let them go. Let them go. And I'm looking at them physically to see where we're going to start. And typically it's from the ground up. And that's what we do. Okay. Once his swing is good and he's performing well, if we need to use technology to look at certain things in his swing to correct a few things, okay, good. It's a tool to use. And it's really a tool to measure also, which is good because, one of the things that'll drive me nuts with a hitter is they'll get, and again, I'm talking about younger kids, they'll get in and they'll get the cage and they'll start hitting. And the first thing they do is they hit the ball, they turn around, they look at the hit tracks to see what their exit velocity was. And that drives me bananas. I turn it off.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What I want to see is if I take a player in and his, exit velocity is 70 miles an hour, I want to see if the drills and the work that we're putting in over time will be measured by the hit tracks to say, okay, now he's hitting his exit velocity is 75 or it's approaching 80 or whatever. Yeah. That's what I like to do with it. Yeah. Because it shows me that whatever we're doing is working, or maybe it's going the opposite way and we need to do something different.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I've watched kids hit off hit tracks and, if there's somebody flipping a ball to you from 15 feet and you tee off on the hit tracks, that's fine. But in kind of my theory around all of baseball is that, especially when it comes to hitters are always responding. A hitter is responding the second he catches a glimpse of the pitcher in the bullpen, right? So if he hears the glove snapping in the bullpen, a hitter starts to respond. There is a change in that hitter of how he is going to approach that day. Now, for some hitters, that some people may come up to that. Some people, it may cause a little bit of worry or fear or whatever. But a hitter is always responding. What happens to the hitter in front of them? What happens to all the hitters up to the game? What's the situation in the game? There's so many things that happen to a hitter before he even steps in the box.
Sure. Absolutely.
That a hitter's responding to. And then, of course, they're responding to the pitch, and they're responding to who threw the pitch. So there's a lot of hitting theory that is measuring the response of a hitter. But if a hitter is always responding, if a hitter sees a pitcher in the bullpen snapping the glove, that is a stimulus. He is responding to that.
Yes.
If he sees some guy, throwing 68 miles an hour, he's getting a confidence response. So the hitter is going to respond. So sometimes we're measuring the response minus the stimulus. Right. So like on Twitter, you see guys that are doing analysis of swings. If you look sometimes when they do side-by-side analysis of swings and be like, oh, you see on this pitch, he was doing this, on that pitch, he was doing this. I'm willing to bet you $1 for every one that they're analyzing two different pitches. There are two different pitches. So you can literally sometimes see, well, this one was higher, this one was lower, this one was in, you literally see that it's two different pitches. And then we're not even looking at what else was the hitter responding to. Who was the pitcher? What was the count? What was the situation? What had he done before? Where was he in his season? Did he play last night till midnight and this is a day game? You know what I mean? Right. Are they coming off a road trip? Did they fly all night and play this game? Or was he fresh in the first one that you're saying is great? And then he's, we just don't know. And we're analyzing these. We're treating the pitch sometimes as the constant and the swing as the variable. Now there's variables in swings, sure, but there's more. The variety in a swing will come from the variety of the stimulus. So I had one kind of a well-known, former major league hitter, and he got really into our stuff. We were having some great conversations, and he was saying, hey, he had a kid who has trouble with an inside pitch, and I said, well, that just can't be the whole story. I said, because it just can't. And so I said, I want you to look at the inside pitches that he has trouble with. And so generally the one that kind of triggered this was they had faced a few lefties, and he got burned on the inside by a few lefties over the course of, like, I don't remember, it was like a week or something like that.
Sure.
And so I said, well, is it because it was an inside fastball? Was it just an inside fastball? Or was it because it was from this lefty who had kind of a funky release point, who threw a little harder, and that pitch was coming in at a different angle, and we're just looking at where the pitch ended up? Right. So we started this all by talking about our journey to coaching, right? Like we're just looking at what and how where ended up. We're just missing the bigger part of it. And so to me, when you're looking at hitting, it's you have to, if you can't look at the entirety of it, then you can't look at any of it.
So with all of this being said, I was really interested about pitch counts and about knowing when your pitcher's getting tired and reps and how to know when you're pushing them too much. There was a whole bunch there that I'd like to get into.
Yeah. So if you're looking at pitch counts, again, the problem with the traditional pitch count, pitch smart, the recommendations is it's fatally flawed. And I get it. I'm not criticizing their intentions. I think their intentions are good. And I think within the confines of, it's weird to say the confines of the vastness of baseball, right? I mean, you're dealing with millions and millions of players. So that confines you. You can't possibly create an individual thing, right? You couldn't even age groups, you couldn't create an individual thing. Right. So while generally that is good advice, just like, if you're not feeling well, drink fluids and rest and stuff like that, right? It's generally good advice, garden variety. Problem is that it assumes a lot of different things. So let's start before the game. It assumes that all pitchers come into the game equal, right? It assumes that the kid didn't play a doubleheader basketball tournament. The kid didn't, play shortstop in game 1, or this isn't game 4 of his 4th game that day or 5th game that weekend. He didn't drive 6 hours to get there, And so that's number one. They're assuming equals. They're assuming equals on mechanics, right? So kids with different mechanics will have different levels of stress per pitch. They're assuming equals on levels of strength. So you could have a kid who's got good mechanics and not a lot of strength, and a kid with bad mechanics but has a lot of strength probably, will end up probably some equal in what they can throw, right? So so that's a problem number one, is they're assuming that, there's a lot of equals. Number two, they're assuming that it's the total that makes the difference in pitchers when it's really how the pitcher arrives at the total. So the way that I explain it is, let's go into the weight room. If I gave you 30 pounds to curl, right, and I said do 15, and then I want you to take like 7 minutes off, and do 15, and then take 7 minutes off, do 15. You could go at that pace for a long time.
Sure.
A long time. But if I tell you to do 32, and then I give you 5 minutes off, maybe a little shorter, right? And then you come back, you might be done. Right. So let's say your kid's pitching against a good team. They get a couple hits, they score a couple runs, he throws 32 pitches. They're throwing a good pitcher. Your team goes down 1, 2, 3. So I know that takes different amounts of time and different innings and stuff like that. But now let's say your kid's out there 5 minutes later, he's back out, 6 minutes later, he's back out on the mound. And he may be done already. He may be completely done. But because we look at the clicker, we look at kind of the grand total as that story, we think that the kid has more in the tank when they probably don't. And so in one instance, you could have a kid who throws 105 pitches, right, over 7 innings at 15 pitches a clip. He could throw 8 innings, throw 120 at 15 pitches a clip with rest in between.
Yeah.
And have one kid who throws 32 pitches and be out there a few minutes later, and that kid could be done. He could be done. So if you think about anything, it's the recovery time it's the number of reps you do, but it's also the recovery time. If you did 32 curls and your team had a big inning, scored 4 or 5 runs, maybe you've got 12, 13, 14 minutes off, then you can go back out there. Okay, well that you've had more time to recover. Right. So it's like, it's something that we understand in the weight room universally. Ask any strength coach. They will slow people down when they're going at too fast pace. We can't necessarily do that in baseball, but every team that I work with a lot of teams all the way from Division I college. I don't care who I work with. If you've got a bunch of 8-year-olds who really want to do it, I'm there. As long as if I can match the commitment of the parent or the coach, I'm there. So we just do red, yellow, green. If your pitcher throws 32 pitches in the first inning, we're red. Yeah. That means we are slowing down the offense. We are walking up to the plate. We are taking signs. I know guys like a lot of hustle and movement. Okay, but hustle and movement cannot be more important than running your best player off the field, right? You can't run pitching staff off the field. So we're slowing down, tapping my cleats. Hey, I think we can still get in. I'm a Christian man. I think if I'm not above faking a lost contact lens to give the pitcher an extra 3 minutes. I think I get up to St. Peter and I can say, the kid threw 32 pitches in the first inning, St. Peter. I mean, I know I lied, but this kid's arm, I was thinking of the bigger picture here. I just want Cy Young in the back going, yep, come on, let him in. He's good. I'll tell you I'll explain it to you later. I'll explain it to the big guy later. Yeah. So, obviously I'm joking, but there's lots of things you could slow the game down. If you give your pitcher 2 or 3 extra minutes, that's a big increase in recovery. So if the first kid hits the first ball and he makes an out, now we might go yellow. Right. Even if your kid threw 15 pitches, we might go a little slow. The offense has to be in sync with the pitcher and their recovery, because we know that one pitcher can shut down 9 hitters. There's not another player on the field that can take care of 9 hitters that can shut that down. We can't let the offense run our pitcher off the field. So there's times where we're red, we're giving that pitcher more rest. Times where we're yellow, in between, and times that we're green. When we're green, just run the offense the way that we run it. Just go with the pace that we normally go. The biggest concern I have is the pitch clocks. I understand it, but the pitch, I don't think. Well, let's put it like this: I don't think pitchers right now are adequately prepared for what they have to do in the game and the intervals that they have to do that. But when we start imposing a time limit on that, I think you're going to see a rash of injuries like nothing you've ever seen. It's literally you're taking the recovery time and shortening it.
Yep.
So think about it. Now you have 14 seconds, right, per pitch, but now that also shortens the innings. So there's a difference between reps. There's less time between reps, and now there's less time between sets. So pitchers, if you're a pitcher listening to this or a parent of a pitcher, look, it's going to trickle down, right? If you are 7 years old right now, this is going to go from Major League Baseball. It's going to go down. Then it can be in college. Then it'll be in some high school tournament, and you're on it's going to happen. You're going to collide with it at some point, no matter where. If you're playing in high school, you're going to collide with it at some point. That literally, completely, and totally changes every single thing that you have to do to prepare for pitching. Right. You have to prepare at your training program, how you throw your bullpens, everything. You're going to it's going to completely alter pitching.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, it makes sense. I mean, it's almost like, I say it all the time, almost everything in this world is common sense. And that there is common sense. The analogy with the weightlifting and the pitching is perfect because it just makes sense.
We all agree to it. We all agree that would be dangerous in the weight room. And also too, like if you're ever in a good gym, right, with a good trainer, and all of a sudden form started to break down a little bit, right? A guy started every trainer in the world would agree. They would tell the guy, put down that weight. Now, we can't tell the kid to put down the baseball.
Right.
But if we see a kid that's doing that, like in practice, we can prepare them ahead of time. Right. But, we don't go out there and say, we ask the kid if they could finish the inning. We ask it how they feel, which is always like the silliest question. How do you feel?
Right.
Right. I mean, it's in your experience of coaching. Like I do remember a few times that I've gotten honest answers, and even those, I think the kid was just scared, just wanted out.
Yeah, I mean, and I could tell you this, that I think it's very rare where I will ask a player. Now, maybe earlier in my coaching career, I may have asked people that, but as of late, I don't remember any time where I would ask somebody how they're feeling, because I'm watching him. Okay, I know what's going on. And to be quite honest, I know this sounds a little harsh. I really don't care how he's feeling. If he's a competitor, he's going to tell me he's feeling great. And I can see that that's not true. He's not finishing. He's leaving everything up. I can see it. Yeah. So it's not a question. It's a matter of me. And again, that's where I think that especially youth coaches, amateur coaches, I think they need to learn these things. What are the signs when a pitcher is tiring, so that, to your point, if you have pitch counts, if your pitcher's cruising, like you said, 15 pitches an inning, getting a rest in between, then the pitch count It's a guideline to when he has to stop because we don't want to overuse him. That's fine. But if you don't recognize the sign, and let's say the pitch count is 75 pitches, and you don't see that he's laboring at 40 pitches and start making a change, well, then you're not coaching. I mean, anybody could take that chart and count and see when to take the pitcher out. That doesn't, it doesn't even make sense.
Yeah, and that's one of the ways that technology can help us, right? Every team can afford one of the, Pocket Radar. I don't remember the name of it. The one that hooks up to the iPad, right? That will literally just give you those dots on the screen, right? Yep. So, when a boxer gets tired, what happens? His hands drop. When the pitcher gets tired, his ball elevates, right? His body gets tired. So you can literally just go in there and, look at the dots on the screen per inning and see, is his ball moving up? Is his ball trending up? What's happening to his control? Yeah. So that's one that I feel like, well, now that's a good use because that's giving us like, data that we don't have to calculate in our head, or we don't have right. This is just like, hey, his balls are up, and he's missing the plate. That's the first sign of fatigue, right? Exactly. Every boxing trainer knows, like when he sees a guy take one in the face bad, like, and those hands, like they know, right? And so why would we wait for them to take a punch? Right. When we can either slow down and maybe get them some recovery time, or get the kid out of the game.
Right. Well, when you to your point, you see those signs. So, you get somebody up in the bullpen, you get him throwing. And then, like you said, maybe you'll get a long inning where he is sitting for quite a while. And that there is that recovery time. Well, I have somebody loose. I'm going to run him back out there again. Let's see if anything changes. If it didn't, then we pull him. We bring the guy in from the bullpen. But it's being prepared, being ready.
And so, and the one thing,
the signs.
Yeah. And the data is one thing you could show a kid. You can say, look, I'm going to send you back out there for one more, but I want you to see where your balls are kind of trending here. Okay. So you're on a short leash. Okay. You're going to get a few, only, we're going to, put you on a short leash. If these next 4 or 5 balls are up here, I'm coming to get you. There should never be a surprise. I'm always, to me as a coach, coaching to me is communication. It's one of our rules when we do coaches training, because no coaching without connection. Because coaching is communication, and you can only communicate through a connection. It's surprising to me that when a pitcher is surprised, they're coming out of the game. To me, I think that comes down to a coaching communication. Like, we didn't discuss that before the game. We didn't have a game plan. And then also, too, when you look at your pitchers, right, if you have a pitcher who hits a certain pitch limit, there's 2 things that are preventing him from reaching that pitch limit. It's either his mechanical efficiency and or his strength and endurance. Right. And so those are things that can be improved. Right. So I've had, I don't know how many kids throughout the years where the parents will say, well, he's only good for 60 pitches. How long have you known that? 2 years. Okay.
What are we doing? All right. What are
you just told me is what he's trained to do. What he, that's what you've told me. Right. So now if you want him to throw more, he either has to be more efficient with how he's throwing it, or he has to be stronger. with his mechanics. And endurance plays a big factor in it. And also it's strength in the right way. That is important too. I can certainly go into that.
I was going to say, explain that a little bit.
Okay, so let me give you the best one. Every pitching coach in the world tells their pitcher to go into the weight room, put a bar on their back, and do what exercise to build strength, leg strength, squats. Right. I tell every young teenager, every 14 to 22, when you go in the weight room, every instinct you have towards an exercise is generally wrong. So it's like, where do you want to go first? Bench, squat, curls, right? Just every instinct. When testosterone is that high through a teenage, well, you're nuts. You're not thinking. You're not in a healthy state of psychological function. So let's take a look at the legs. Pitchers will say, coaches will say, do your squats for legs, do lunges for legs, and some of that can be helpful. But I can't tell you right now. I have 54 college pitchers that I have working with me in various states, and their numbers are all over the place. Like, they're squatting 300, 400 pounds and stuff like that. Big, strong guys that can't pitch.
Right.
That can't move their body efficiently. They can move a lot of dead weight efficiently, but they can't move the weight of their, blood, bones, organs, and skin and muscle tissue. And
is it almost like because they're lifting so much weight with their legs that it's kind of like locking them up and they can't move fluid?
Well, it's just different strength.
Okay.
It's just a different type of strength. So It's almost like looking at somebody with big biceps and shoulders and going, that guy must have a great pitching arm.
Right.
Nobody says that. Nobody says that. But we look at weight totals, lifting totals, and we think that must for some reason, I don't know why, we don't make that kind of, you never looked at a bodybuilder and said, wow, that guy must throw gas.
Right.
Right. But we look at a kid's squat numbers or deadlift numbers, and we just think, oh, this kid must be a powerful baseball player. So let's think about it like this. So the legs in the pitching motion really divides into two parts. We think it's one, but it's really two. We divide it into foundational movements and high speed movements. So foundational movements are everything that happens from your front foot hits the ground. I mean, from the first movement to your front foot hits the ground. And I'll always give ultimate credit where credit is due to where Tom House is the guy. And I could go into, what the contributions that Tom made to the game, because I think they're really undervalued right now. I know he's getting a lot of appreciation and attention, but the contributions he made to the game were monumental, were massive. And so it was all this what I learned in what he was so gracious to teach me. So that is the first second of the delivery, right? The rest of the delivery is like 3.5, depending to like 4 seconds long. Amateur, it gets longer as kids are go down in levels and more amateur baseball. So for the first second, they are literally on their back leg. They're on their right leg or left leg, right? And they're mostly that left leg is stabilizing them as they move down the mound. I know there's all kinds of theories on it, but that's essentially what it's doing.
What's happening?
So the back leg is working as a stabilizer for 1 second, personally, like in an isometric position for 1 second. The front leg, now that hits, right? And all of that, ground force production, right? You push against the ground pushes up against you, 6 times body weight comes rushing up through your body, potential of kinetic energy, how it runs up the chain, right? So that front foot stops. And now it has to brace as all that comes up the chain.
Right.
So think about it now. And so the back hip will rotate inward. The front hip will rotate outward, right? Mm-hmm. So you've got two legs who are doing two different jobs for two different lengths of time. But we train pitchers with the weight is balanced equally, even though like their foot pressure might be different, but like essentially equally for the same amount of time. In a linear up and down motion that builds overall absolute strength, but really is not training anything that a pitcher would do. Literally, the legs have to be trained in two different ways at two different lengths of time to do two different jobs.
Wow.
And so when we look at it like that, now I've had guys who are, a lot of my pitchers are in big Division I programs, are driving away, and 53 of them are out of state. So that they're driving away from pitching coaches, right? Mm-hmm. And driving past, I kid drove 8 hours a couple weeks ago, and must have drove past hundreds of pitching coaches, right? And when I say this to them, they've never heard it. They've never heard that before,
right?
And so
I've never heard it either. So go ahead.
Yeah, and so, but like these are guys who have said, like, oh, I went and lived at this facility for the summer, or I went into this camp or that camp, and to me, these are the fundamental core basics of what Tom House taught. And there are principles to this. And so if you take what I always say, the biggest problem in baseball today is if you take 100 pitchers and put them in one room, 100 pitching coaches, you put them in the other room, and you ask those pitchers, give me 4 principles of pitching. Any 4. Just give me 4. You'll hear arm speed, hips, like velo, right? You'll hear like this words just dumped everywhere, right?
Right.
Then you go into the room with the pitching coaches and you say, give me 4 principles of pitching. Any four. Give me what you think number 1, 2, 3, and 4 are. You will hear 100 different answers. Then an argument will break out. And then it could come to blows. Right? I mean, look at Twitter, right? It goes 3 comments deep before it turns into a personal attack. Right? It's like, well, I disagree with you. Oh, well, you're not seeing it this way. Well, I'll bet you.
That's why I keep my mouth shut.
You kick puppies, I've been surprisingly restrained, maybe for the first time in my life. I'm always shocked because as a young man who when face to face opened my mouth, and I'm surprisingly quiet in a situation where nothing. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I need the threat of violence.
Now I think as we get older, we get a little smarter.
So a war will break out. Now, if you take 100 fifth graders and you put them in one room and you take 100 of the best mathematicians from the top universities in America, and you go to the fifth graders, what are the four principles of mathematics? They will say addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. You go into the professors, what are the four principles of mathematics? Addition, subtraction, multiplication. That's the problem we have in baseball. Right. Is that there are principles to this. Right. There are principles to this. There are ways to teach it. There are things that kids just need to do. Right. And, one of I think the thing that gets in the way, especially in the technology world now, is the model they are working from is flawed. So let me preface this by saying I love this guy watching his pitch. I think he's a great pitcher. I think he's a great competitor. I think he's a great human being. I've heard about all the things he's done. I know he's universally loved. If he's pitching a game tonight, I'm watching it. If I'm pitching a game, if I'm coaching a game 7 and I have the opportunity to pitch this guy, I'll probably pitch him. But Clayton Kershaw is kind of used as a model. People will point to him as, oh, he was the greatest because he's kind of the greatest talent of that generation, right? Mm-hmm. So Clayton Kershaw does not have good pitching mechanics. He doesn't. So there was a study that basically said, a 20% reduction in lower half efficiency, right, will equal about a 34% increase in what your shoulder would have to do. So if you look at it, it's like if you're not great with your lower half, you're kind of paying $1.30 per pitch. You're paying extra, right? Right. And so I know why Clayton Kershaw throws that way. I know why he continues to throw that way. But so many of the teaching things that have become mainstays now are corrections off of a flawed model. So Clayton Kershaw was kind of the poster child for a lead leg block. The reason why Clayton Kershaw has a lead leg block is because he has an incredible stride across his body. And the only thing that he can do to be able to kind of launch forward to create a release point that will go around home plate is to lock out the front leg. So they say, well, he gets a bump in velocity from doing it. Yes, because if he kept going in the direction that he's going, he would throw the ball over the first base dugout. And so it's almost like saying, Red Bull gives me a bump in energy in the morning. Oh, and Red Bull kind of became the system. But the problem is you didn't get a great night's sleep. You're sleeping 5 hours a night. So the models that we have now are just severely flawed. And so we're teaching from those models. We're literally teaching almost like a duct taping that pitchers are using. We're teaching duct tape has become kind of the system.
So it's basically if you're not mechanically sound, you're paying a tax for that is basically what it comes down to.
Yeah, and you could be totally strong. Yeah. A guy that I loved, Jake Arrieta, right? Like I think he's 35, but he hasn't been himself for about 3 or 4 years. He was on the cover of Men's Health. He looks like, like he's some kind of fitness model, but he can't stay healthy enough to pitch. That, to me, that's a failure of our system. I think if you lined up Nolan Ryan, Tom Seaver, Pedro Martinez, Johnson, Maddox, and you lined up Scherzer, DeGrom, Verlander, and Kershaw, and you just took away who they were, right? You put them in disguise, right? And we had a skills competition. You wouldn't be able to tell the difference of those guys. You wouldn't be able to tell. They all have that genetic gift. They all have Hall of Fame level DNA. And they all have Hall of Fame level work ethic. There's no doubt about that. My question is, what were they taught? And then did they have an environment? So like if Jacob deGrom was in front of me, I would say your stride's too long. And I'll bet you nobody's going to tell you that because I don't have a job to lose. I'm not going to change you. And then, oh, he's the guy who changed. No, but like, that's what I would tell him.
So with all of this being said about these professional pitchers, so let's take the younger guys, because I believe, and I it's not that I believe, I know, because I see it all the time, that I get players up at the high school level that don't know the very simplest things about anything about the game. I don't care if you want to talk about hitting, pitching, fielding, base running, mental aspect, approach, anything. They're not being taught. So if we can take everything that you were just talking about, what would your suggestion be for coaches out there to concentrate on with their young pitchers? The most important thing to get them foundationally correct.
So I would start with, I'll go over some simple things mechanically that I think are important. But I would start with, who are you coaching? So the reason why I have the number of pitchers that come to me is pitchers know, or I don't even say they know, but they've been through a lot of stuff like we talked about, but they they are missing the thing that makes them special. So I just put out a series of videos on how pitchers are savage, animalistic competitors. They are unlike any other position in baseball. I mean, in sports. People say, well, they're like a quarterback. No, they're not. They're not. Quarterback turn around, hand the ball off. Yeah. Quarterback can run the entire offense away from a linebacker or somebody like on the bat. A boxer has one opponent and they get months to prepare and they know who he is. They can study their opponent. Most pitchers show up to a game. I would say probably 99% of pitchers pitching a game today below the high school level have no idea who they're facing.
No idea. Even at the high school level.
They may know a few guys. High school level, they may know a few guys, right? But there's at least 3 or 4 hitters in they know absolutely nothing about. They've never even seen before in their life. So if you think about that, we don't look at the pitcher as who they are from like internally. So the pitcher is he's willing to take the ball. He's willing to act. Everybody else in the field is reacting. Hitters, base runners, infielders, outfielders, base coaches, everyone's reacting. They're literally standing elevated above everyone else. They know that 30% of the time they'll walk out to that mound with absolutely nothing, right? And they'll have to try and pitch. They know that even if they pitch a good game and a coach takes them out of, let's say 6 scoreless innings, in the top of the 7th, they put the tying run on first, right? The coach is going to come get them. They'll just throw in a gem and they will be unsatisfied.
Sure.
They know that they will probably leave the game not on their terms, right? The individual game. They don't want to play the other team. They want to face every other person on the team one by one. Outside of they're the only player on the team that is credited for wins and losses separately, right? They're willing to take responsibility. The work they have to do in between pitching is generally pretty miserable. They are on a team, but they are generally isolated. Nobody's doing the same thing as them. Even if they're in a 5-day cycle with other pitchers, every pitcher's doing something different on any given day.
Yeah.
They are unique, competitive animals. Their competitive language is this. And you can ask any pitcher. They want to hunt, intimidate, annihilate, devastate, humiliate, and destroy every hitter that steps in the box.
Absolutely.
And so what we do is we say, hit spots, throw strikes, get it out, put up a 0. And then we diminish their competitive language. That is not the competitive language that they speak. And so they're trying, but we speak the language of outcome, right? This is what we want to have happen. Now that comes from us analyzing the best pitchers in baseball, analyzing the outcomes, the output of the best pitchers in baseball, reverse engineering it, right? And then re-engineering it and say, hey, here's how they moved. Here's how they trained. Here's the pitches they threw. Here's blah, 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 blah. But here's the thing. I can measure a lion, their stride length. I can measure how fast they run. I can measure the pounds per square inch they bite. I can measure how deep they sink their teeth in. I can measure all that. But what I can't measure is 2 things. I can't measure what stirs hunger in the lion. And I can't measure what triggers that hunger. I mean, that lion when they smell blood. The pitcher's language is all the things I just mentioned. Their governing dynamic is danger and risk. They thrive on living in between those 2 worlds of this could be the greatest, most exhilarating day, or this could go horribly wrong and I'll be publicly embarrassed.
Yeah.
And a pitcher can't have a bad game without the entire stadium knowing it.
Right.
Third baseman boots a ball, unless it really has like a direct impact on a game. People forget about it. But if a pitcher has a bad game, my grandmother knows it.
So
right. And so that would be step 1 is you have to look, even an 8-year-old kid, if they want to go to the mound, they smell blood. They are not normal. I will coach pitchers till the day that I drop, right? Me and you, Jim, right? If we go out and they're dragging, they bring us into the morgue, they're going to roll us over and there's going to be cream clay on our back, right? We're just going to go like, I'd rather go face first. That would be a little bit better, right? If you just face planted, right. But they're going to bring us out and dust the dirt, the bean clay off of us, right? Because the pitchers have a texture and a personality that to me is the most fascinating, interesting thing I've ever encountered in my entire life. They dance on the razor's edge and they want to do it.
So if I could jump in here for a second. So basically it's what my belief is, and I've preached this on this show many, many times. It all comes down to really the mental performance of the pitcher. Okay. if you take a pitcher that has great mechanics, everything is good about this guy, but he's weak mentally, he's not going to be successful. Whereas you could take a pitcher that maybe has a few flaws mechanically, okay, and maybe is not throwing the ball the hardest. But if he's mentally prepared and he knows how to compete, he's going to be a more successful pitcher than the guy who maybe has the better mechanics but is weak mentally.
So yeah, so I think the mental weakness comes in when they try and be a nice kid, when they try and be that character, they try and be this throwing strikes, hitting. That's hard work for them.
Yeah,
that is not their native language. Right. So that's why, like when you're animalistic and you want to hunt, and somebody has kind of declawed you, taken away your roar,
right?
You know, if you want to take a roar away from a lion, take away the predator prey relationship. They don't need to roar. They don't need to signal anymore. So we have kids in warehouses. We have kids throwing bullpens with no hitters. We don't activate that animalistic side of them. And then we just expect it to show up when they need it.
That's so true.
You know, yeah. So remember, like Kurt Schilling, right? He's guy's bleeding out of his sock, right? Now we can't. Kurt Schilling was bleeding out of his sock. Now we can't even have a guy who makes $300 million a year or $300 million contract pitch with the bases loaded. Like that's too hard for him. And so, and I guarantee you, Garrett Cole left that game. I'll bet you no one will ever admit it. I'll bet you he left that game because he said, well, let your data guys, either way I win.
Right. Exactly.
Your data guys say, bring this guy in and he gives up a homer, I win. If then you made a mistake and I was the right choice. If he comes in, strikes out the side, we win the world. I win. We're going to the World Series, right? I win either way. And he was just like, you're going to make me fight for it. And then they're going to crucify me if I fight for it. And so these pitchers, because they took, could you, I always ask my pitchers, like, what do you think they say to like Nolan Ryan or Mariano Rivera when they, or Max Scherzer? Do you think they say like, now, you think they hand the ball to Rivera, go, now throw strikes and hit your spots? Scherzer, hey, make sure you're getting outs. No, they hand them the ball and they get the hell out of their way.
Right.
And they let them do that thing. So just like Clayton Kershaw, right? If we're playing game 7 and you told me Clayton Kershaw had a bad hamstring, I'm still probably throwing him, right? Because there's a competitive animal inside that guy that he finds another level. Think about that bases loaded situation with Cole or Blake Snell. I always talk about, that pulled him out. Could you imagine that in any other sport? Could you imagine in the fourth quarter, Bill Belichick going, we got to get Brady out of here. They've seen him for 3 quarters. They've seen him for 3 quarters. We got to get a fresh arm in there. These guys, they're on him by now.
That never happened.
Or LeBron. Don't pass it to LeBron. They've been watching him shoot for. It's insane.
Right.
It's insane.
Yeah.
But we just it's just we can go into all that. But so getting back to the pitcher, it's getting them in touch with that, showing them how to turn that on, and then also how to kind of come down from it. Right. Letting them be aggressive. I take every kid that comes and sees me. I talk to them. I always give them all a chance to get it all out. And I get a lot of nice kids. And I would say, look, you're a nice kid. You're raised right. You're respectful. I appreciate that as a man, as a fellow father, as a coach. I appreciate that. And then I grabbed that young man by the hand. I walked him to the mound. And I said, now, right here, there's no bleeping place for that kid here.
Right.
You'll go right back to being a nice kid as soon as we're done.
Right.
But right now, you've got to get in touch with something else.
Absolutely.
And then they got to be able to come down from it, right. and so they don't know how to do that without being a jerk.
Right. And I mean, the thing is, it's a very hard thing. I believe that I would say 99% of the time that's built in. It's very difficult.
They wouldn't pitch without it.
Right. It's different, very difficult to try and train somebody to think that way, because believe me, I try to do it all the time, and I can't even use the words that I use with my pitchers when I'm telling them, when I'm teaching them how to compete. But especially kids nowadays, that's their initial instinct is to be afraid, as opposed to being the aggressor.
Yeah.
So it's hard to teach, very hard to teach.
And baseball's a tough game to do that with, because you can't go hit somebody, right? You can't get angry and drive the ball to the middle of the hoop. You know what I mean? You could be fired up and like, oh, I'm up in 2 innings.
Right.
You know what I mean? Right. Or I just pitched and now I got to sit here with this. The pitcher has the most ability to kind of act, the only ability to act. But I mean, in intervals too, right? The intervals. So when it comes to basic throwing mechanics, I do two things when I'm teaching coaches. The first thing is a drill that, one of the drills that we're kind of known for is Yankee Stadium drill. And so I'll ask, a kid or if I'm teaching coaches, if they're doing it, coach. And I'll say, look, show me a pitching delivery. Show me your pitching delivery. Kind of like full speed, whatever, it's just dry throw. And they will go through their, step 1, step 2, step 3 pitching delivery. And I say, okay, now I want you to really use your imagination here. And I want you to pretend that we're in Yankee Stadium and we're standing at home plate and I have a contract in my hand for $1 million. I will sign you to the Yankees. You'll be minor league player with the Yankees. I have a check here for $1 million. I'll give you $1 million. Make your dreams come true. Big, whole bunch of money. The only thing you have to do is throw the ball over the center field wall. And if you do that, it's yours. So I said, I want you to use your imagination, kind of get into how that would feel. What would how would you be moving? How would you do it? And I said, when you get up, I want you to kind of walk up to home plate. And then I want you to give me the highest, hardest, farthest throw you've ever made for a whole bunch of money and all your dreams come true. And I've had kids like really get into it, and all of a sudden, like when they get up there and they're like, I'm like, all right, throw when you're ready. And they're like, oh. And all of a sudden they're a different thrower.
Right.
And I said, now show me your pitching delivery. Oh, that's this. And so here's the thing is that what they do, the pitching delivery, that's rehearsal.
Right.
That's what they've rehearsed.
It's mechanical, it's robotic.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. But when the only direction I gave them in the Yankee Stadium drill was over the center field wall.
Right.
High, hard, far. When I asked them to throw high, hard, and far, they organized their body to get it done.
Right.
Right. So it's kicked around baseball. It's called Bernstein's principle. It's like basically the body will organize based on the job you give it.
Right.
Right. So if there's a target there, our body will organize to try and hit the target, just like throwing over the center field wall. So that's number one is I want coaches and players to see that the way they've been taught to pitch, they want to throw harder. They want to be animalistic. They want to release this thing in them, but they're doing their 4-step, 5-step delivery to try and hit spots and throw strikes.
Right.
So that's number one. Number two is I take all the kids out to shortstop, or I take the coaches out to shortstop. And what I want them to do is I want them to feel the ball that they like I give them like a nice kind of step to the side hop, that they have to go to the right, just a step. And then they have to change directions and throw to first base. So however long that throw is, right? 100 plus feet, depending upon where they are. So then they take a step. And then what you will see is a kid shuffle, throw. His eyes will stay right on first base. Everything will go perfectly because he's got to throw it. He's got to make a long throw to a target.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
So when you look at those, and now obviously with video being so easy and portable, everybody can kind of look at it and share it real quick and we can see it. When you look at that, you will see that kids know how to throw. Kids know how to throw. We coach them out of it with our steps. Yeah. They know how to throw. Right. Yeah. So I would show that to them and say, look, obviously when you're pitching, I want you high, hard, and far, right? Just blow it out there. Now, once I can get that, so once I can release a little bit of that savage animalistic competitor, now I've got the fire blazing. Now let me see if I can burn it into what do they call that? Pilot light, right? Let me see if I can channel that to use that to heat the whole home.
Right.
And so that's, to me, once we bring that in, and the way that I do it is really simple, is put up a target, make it a game.
Right.
It's universal. It's never not worked, right? So if I tell the kids, look, I want you to work on throwing the ball, right? Really hard, really aggressive, with everything you got. Boom, throw. Okay, now do that and hit a target.
Right.
And if I was teaching this, if I was like starting today, November, whatever today is, 12th, I would start with a kid throwing into a wall, a net, whatever. And then after he got comfortable with that, I would put a target on that net, which are so easy to get now, right? Hula hoop.
Yeah.
And then I would back them up.
Yeah.
Give me high, hard, and far in the hula hoop. Give me high, hard, and far, back up in the hula hoop. Then obviously all those targets you can buy with Velcro and stuff like that, you can make the target smaller. So, but you want to set with the baseline of what you ultimately want. But what we're doing is we're teaching these pitching mechanics steps. We're deprogramming everything they know. We're not accessing it's almost like we're going into the hard drive but we're not accessing this like internet. You know what I mean? Like this whole living, breathing thing within them, right? No, the only thing you have is in this hard drive. Now, a lot of that too is the industry. The industry is, that's a whole nother probably discussion for us to have. But
do you think that a lot of it comes, and I seen this also, where I think that a lot of times trainers, coaches, whatever you want to say, they're trying to impress you with how much they know.
Yeah.
And most of the time, my feeling is let them go. There's a couple of things in a hitter's swing, obviously, that have to be there. Okay. And I will make sure that my players have that. But after that, see the ball and hit the ball. That's it.
Yeah.
I don't want to make robots. I want to make sure you're staying behind the ball. Those things are like the rudimentary. But there's only like 3 or 4 of them. Other than that, see it and hit it, and whatever happens, happens.
So like when when I work with hitters, and my buddy, a guy who is like just made a huge impact on my coach career, a guy named Dan Mondelli, he just became the head coach at Raritan Valley Community College. Which, if there's any players listening that want an opportunity, there just could not be a better baseball person for you to be with and to play for. He's just an amazing human being and baseball coach, and he's been there and done that, and it's just an amazing guy. And so, I've worked with a lot of bigger programs where I've done this, but this program, his program, was the first group of hitters and probably the least talented, group that I've worked with, and nothing I wouldn't say to them.
Right.
They know that, but these kids were tough.
There you go.
And so when I get in the cage, however you want to think about your swing, think about your swing. I don't care.
Right.
I don't care. Right. So what I'm doing is, though, I ask every kid, I can be your friend or your foe. What do you want me to be? You want me to be your friend? Okay, here you go.
Yeah.
Oh, you're great. Here you go. Oh, awesome. Here, hit this. Woo,
right.
Look at you. Look at you. And you're in collaboration with the hitter to try and get them to hit.
Right.
Right. Like a home run derby. That's kind of what our training looks like. So I say, they usually don't. They either say, they have a whole bunch of different answers. But I said, no, you want me to be your foe. You want me to oppose you. You want me to throw you 25 batting practice balls. And I love throwing batting practice. It's one of my favorite things. But, and I said, look, I'll make you feel good, make you look good, but I won't make you good. I said, here's what I'm going to do is I've watched all you guys hit. I know what you can and can't hit. I can watch you swing a couple times. I'm giving you nothing.
Right.
And I am going to train you to wait my mistake. And so we just do at bats. I'll throw for 2 hours straight. And we'll just do at bat after at bat. If the kid pops one up, I have a real simple question for him. Was that my pitch or your pitch?
Right.
And now that's building awareness each and every time through, that's building more and more awareness. And then little by little, I'm talking trash to him. I'm like, I own you. I've gotten you 3 times in a row. This is 4. Why don't you leave the bat outside? This is my cage. I can't even believe you're still here.
Right.
And they know that I'm coming from a positive place with it.
Right.
But what I'm doing is I want them to smell blood.
Sure. Absolutely.
And I'm going to tell you what, when they hit a mistake and they pepper one off the back of the cage, they look at me like, I got you.
I got you.
Yep. I got you. And we're training them to we look at numbers, right? I have a lot of at-bats that I carry around, like full at-bat videos. Let's look at this home run, right? It's one Aaron Judge one's just perfect, right? He was 0-2, took 3 sliders, out of the zone, and then got a 3-2 hit ball to hit a home run. I said, he got 1 pitch to hit in that at bat, and he waited for it. I said, so let's go off that. You'll get 1 pitch to hit. Let's go off that. And that one guy made a 3-2 pitch right in his zone mistake. That's not where he wanted to put it, and Judge made him pay. So actually, hold on. Let me see if I have it. So I carry around this fishing lure, and I got like a rubber baseball attached to it, and I hold it up to the kids and I say, what is this? It's like fishing lure. I said, who is this? What is this supposed to look like in the water? Like a fish. I'm like, okay, to who? A fish. Right. Okay. How does a fish know this is a fishing lure and not a fish? Well, they bite it. Okay. So my job as your batting practice coach is I want to throw you a lot of fishing lures.
Yeah.
Now you're going to learn. The good thing is that you don't die, right? When you bite into it, right? You you can learn. So my job as a pitcher is to make these all look like fish. Your job as the hitter is to get really good at discerning fish from fishing lures.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to tell you, this team, this Raritan Valley College team, boy, I'm going to tell you, I've never had a team respond. Every single kid on the team they like wanted a piece to get into the cage again and again. And I've had kids from bigger programs. One kid, I'm not doing this. I'm like, okay.
Oh, really?
Like, but yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, you know what it is that they like that. I don't know, that coach. I always want to fight on his name to give him credit. But, they were trained in the zoo, right? There's a coach that has that training in the zoo, and then we release them into the jungle.
Yep.
And all of a sudden there's somebody that wants a piece of them. Right. So the way we talked about the lion before, but the way that you take the best part of the lion and you take the hunt out of the lion is put him in a cage and feed him 3 times a day.
Sure. Absolutely.
So you want to take the grit, the lion out of a hitter, put him in a cage and throw him 60-mile-an-hour fastballs over the plate.
Yeah. I think I'm going to steal that fishing lure analogy.
Yeah. I'll send you the picture of it. Yeah.
I think I'm going to use that, but the thing is, I wanted to get into the 5, 6, 7 stuff, but it's going to be too much for one show.
Okay.
Because
I'll come back anytime.
I really want that out there because when I listen to that, boy, and it's more for coaches than it is for anything else to understand that if they use it with their parents, that it's going to make a big difference in the way you coach. So. Yeah. I think maybe what we should do is maybe wrap this up for now.
Sure.
And then, like you said, if you wouldn't mind, I'd love to have
absolutely
because I think we can do almost a whole show just on that.
Yeah. I've done a bunch of them on that. So yeah, anytime. I'm more than happy to. Anytime.
So there we have what we'll call part 1 from Paul Reddick. Geez, I couldn't even get a word in edgewise. You guys were so involved with each other there.
Yeah. It was definitely an interesting conversation. There was a lot of stuff there. I just wanted to touch a little bit on a few things here and there before we got to really what I felt was the meat and potatoes of the conversation, which is his book, 5, 6, 7 Dad. But Dave, there was just so much information there that I just wanted to keep rolling with it. And it looks like we're going to have him back.
Yeah, he is one of the double-edged swords of somebody like that who does this kind of thing for a living. His whole being is based on instruction and talking about how to do things and how he does things and why he does things and all that. Much like myself, sometimes where I can just get on a roll and keep going, it's kind of hard to rein us in. Unfortunately, I had a personal situation that I couldn't join the conversation for. It's something maybe we'll get into down the line on the show. But so I was glad you were able to have that talk with him. It's covered a lot of different avenues in terms of developing your players, and you can just tell he's just a volcano of information erupting out at you. It's kind of hard to corral that in.
Yeah, you could actually, as we were doing the show, you could actually feel his energy, feel his passion. For the most part, I mean, I just let him go because there was really nothing for me to interject with. And I thought that there's got to be a lot of stuff out there that people are going to be able to take away from that.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And, I mean, he's a businessman and he is looking to sell his program, and it's an extremely successful program for a reason, because it works and because he is so passionate about what he does, and he's not changing things up with these trinkets and toys that you see some of these other programs have. What he does works, and sometimes I'm sure he makes little adjustments here and there through the years, but otherwise you stick with what works. And when you create the type of player base that he's created, success continues to breed success in those types of situations, and all of his players are living proof that it works.
Sure. And, not only was there the technical part of it, there was a very big portion of the interview where I took away from it that one of his big things is you have to get to know the player. And we've spoken about that. We've had other guests on that have talked about that. And I really believe that that's so important for us to do as coaches is to learn about our players, get to know the player, and it'll make it easier for you to coach that player because you'll really know what that person is all about.
Yeah, and that's what we talked about with Bill Ekstrom, and hopefully a lot of our listeners, or most of our listeners, went through and listened to his TED Talk that's out on YouTube, where that's the focus of where his involvement with sports is really on that side of things, and how much of a difference we can make in our players, not just from the athletic standpoint, but just in their lives, of having that safe space and that confidant and that true leader, mentor as a coach, how much of a difference that can make in some of these kids' lives. And Paul certainly embodies some of those sentiments himself.
Absolutely. So very important. But I mean, like I said, now I've already reached out to him, spoke to him about getting him back. So we will be doing the part 2, we'll call it, of this show, where we do get to discuss his 5, 6, 7 Dad book. And boy, I'm telling you, people, that show will be something that you'll want to listen to. If you're a coach, even parents out there, that 5, 6, 7 Dad that he talks about is just to me, it's an amazing approach to things.
All right. Well, we'll definitely look forward to that. And we look forward to bringing you more shows like this. We want to ask you guys to get out there and give us 5 stars, give us a review on the Apple Podcasts, your Spotify, however you're hearing us today. Ask you guys to go and do that. It just helps. It pushes us up the charts. Our listenership is growing continually, and we thank you very, very much for that as we head in towards the end of the year here. Not sure if we're going to sneak another show in. This will probably be it, considering the date that we're doing this. So I know it's been a fantastic year for me, not just from a baseball standpoint, but also from doing the show and just regular life. And I love hearing from you guys out there. I know Jimmy does as well. Let him speak for himself on that. But we can't thank you enough from the bottom of our hearts. It's been a great year, and we're looking forward to an even more successful 2023, where we will always keep in mind the only 2 things in this life that we can control are our own effort and our own attitude. Give me a PMA, positive mental attitude, 100% effort at all times, and great things will follow. Final thoughts, Coach?
Yeah, so like you said, here we are finishing up 2022, heading into 2023, and a lot of new things are going to be happening this year. And I mean, I'm really, really looking forward to this new year. And like Dave said, I just want to thank everybody. The last almost 2 years have been amazing. It's been humbling, I guess is the right word to say. It's been very, very humbling to see the success that this show has had. And I just want to thank everybody for that. And what I do want to remind everybody is, first of all, I want to tell everybody have a very, very happy holiday. And I want to remind everybody that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Thanks again, everyone, and we'll see you on the next one.